This is the square antiprism, the very same shape as the One World Trade Center. But it also is the shape of the element sulfur. Brimstone, mentioned 14 times in the Bible. The very first time mentioned to bring about judgment to Sodom and Gomorrah. You cannot make this up. Sulfur is right next to the element phosphorus on the periodic table. Phosphorus is the element of Lucifer, the light bearer. Phosphorus is prevalent in the makeup and chemistry of all devices with screens. Why? Because when you add electricity to phosphorus, it glows green. And this is why you saw some of the early television screens that looked green. They glowed green with the phosphorus. This is a match striking surface made of mixing of red phosphorus, glue, and ground glass. There's your matrix. Then the Lord rained down on Sodom and Gomorrah brimstone and fire from the Lord out of heaven. And he overthrew these cities and all in the valley and all in the inhabitants of the cities. And nothing grows in areas where brimstone, phosphorus, or sulfur is prevalent. So what is this odd shape? The square antiprism. This is it. And it has a as above, so below, mirroring 4 triangles on top of 4 triangles that are pointed in the opposite direction. That's 44. You see, this goes very deep because 88 xenon lights shined on the World Trade Center Ground Zero site every year on 9/11. 88 xenon purple lights, which is why the S8 molecule, which we just talked about, is structured with 8 atoms that occupy 8 vertices of the prism. That's 88. This is the S8 configuration of the sulfur molecule. And as I was scrolling down, I said, this looks a lot like a crown. And whose crown might this be? And when I got to this image, it confirmed that it looks like a crown because they call it a crown ring. This is the S8 stable molecule of sulfur that is an anti-prism. And what you're looking at is the as above, so below. Sulfur, the crown of the devil. King on earth for a while. So you see, not only does the cube antiprism contain the 44, but it also contains the 88, which is why Obama was from the 88th parallel, Chicago. He was the one who brought this tower to bear, opening under his presidency. So you see, nothing is by accident. Nothing. And if you have eyes to see, you begin to understand the truth. We are at 44 years since the World Trade Center opened in 1973. And everything is all about the crowns, right? Well, the crown Cyrus really did bring about 1984. It's interesting that the word crown is actually mentioned in the King James Bible 84 times. Here are some of the times that the word crown is actually mentioned in the King James Bible. Some of those crowns are good, but many of those crowns are bad. 17 total crowns and horns. So, with all this talk about Q and crowns, I decided to open up the Bible and take a look. And, of course, the floodgates opened, and I found this. Now, someone had already put this graphic together, but when I looked at the graphic, I noticed that 7 crowns and 10 horns is a total of 17. That's in Revelation 12. We also have Revelation 13. 10 crowns, 7 heads. 17. Revelation 17. We have 7 heads, 10 horns. Are you seeing a pattern here? The dragon, the beast, the woman riding the beast. Now, what does the number 17 have to do with Q? Well, we know that the letter Q is represented as the number 17, alphanumerically. When you count through the alphabet, A equals 1, B equals 2, C equals 3, and so on and so forth. Basic numerical equivalents. And the elite like to use these numerical equivalents to hide things in esoteric meanings. So, we have a bit of a pattern, but okay, big deal, Casey. That's just a coincidence, right? You need more than that to make a case for the letter Q being related to the book of Revelation. Well, we're going to look at some of those other coincidences. Look at the serpent next to the graphic here, and you can see that the letter Q almost looks like a serpent crawling out of a hole. And if you look at the capital letter Q, let's pull that up. In cursive, it also looks like a crouching serpent. Here's the letter Q here. Let's take a look at the cursive version of this. This isn't just the book of Revelation. There's so much more to this that we're going to cover this morning. So here's the cursive Q, and again, it looks like a serpent crouching and coiled over itself. Now, when delving into the history of the letter Q, I didn't really find any direct references to a serpent. In fact, it's most closely associated with the shape of a monkey. Let's take a search on this page and find that. A knot or even a monkey with a tail hanging down. And so basically the downstroke of the letter Q is the tail of the monkey. It's kind of weird. Monkey see, monkey do, right? Q is the name also of the Guatemalan currency called the quetzal. Here it is right here. They actually call it Q, as you can see here. This is the symbol of the quetzal for the Guatemalan currency. Now, they named the quetzal in Guatemala after this bird, who was named after Quetzalcoatl. And this particular bird lays eggs that have an incubation period of 6 plus 6 plus 6 days. 18 days is the incubation period of the Guatemalan bird called the quetzal, which was named after Quetzalcoatl. Let me show you this here. This is the resplendent quetzal. Look at this bird. The colors on this bird. Now they talk about this down here, about the occult meaning behind this bird.
and that its incubation period for the eggs is 666. Myth and legend, the resplendent Quetzal was considered divine, associated with the snake god Quetzalcoatl. The Aztec and the Maya viewed it as the god of the air. We know who the ruler of the air is, do we not? Now, we talked a lot on this channel about how birds are very close in their DNA to a snake. And this is why they call the feathered serpent the feathered serpent. Okay? Because feathers are on birds, and birds are very closely related to reptiles. Now, that is not a statement of evolution. That's just the genetic makeup of a bird. Just like humans are very close in DNA to a monkey, even though we didn't come from a monkey. Now that we're talking about monkeys. And some people misunderstand what I was saying about these birds being related to serpents, thinking that I was believing in evolution. Absolutely not. But we would all agree that certain animals seem to be related to one another in the way that they were created by God. So, it's interesting because this Guatemalan Quetzal, you can see actually the number 17, which again is alphanumerically the equivalent of Q, and its ISO number 4217. I don't think that's an accident. Now, we decoded this film called Q. It's a 1982 film, and here you see the letter Q shaped like the serpent. So you know that I'm not making this up, okay? I'm not just saying the letter Q looks like a serpent. They show it to you right here. This was 1982, and this was all about Quetzalcoatl, the feathered serpent. And this thing flies around the city, and it lives on top of the Chrysler building. If you want to check out that decode on my other channel, this is something you might want to look at. You can do a search on that channel for the letter Q, and you'll find this decode. Look at this in the background. They even have the famous two buildings back here in the skyline. And there's much more to this than meets the eye, but in that decode I definitively draw a link between the letter Q and Quetzalcoatl. Okay? Now, here's where things get interesting. The earliest form of the letter Q was called the cough. Okay? Think about that for a minute. Cough. And it's the 19th. 19? Hello? 19th letter, CV19 in the Aramaic alphabet. As you can see here. 19th letter of, they call it that alphabet. Can't say that word on YouTube anymore. But they're the victims, right? And it was based on the eye of the needle. Here it is right here. The origin of the glyph shape of cough is uncertain. It is usually suggested to have originally depicted either a sewing needle, specifically the eye of the needle, or the back of a head and neck, or the nape of the neck. And they talk about the monkey tail as well. And that's interesting because there's a Bible verse about the eye of a needle and a camel trying to pass through the eye of the needle, and that being compared to a rich man trying to get to heaven. Well, Trump is the richest president ever to serve ×2. Now, they even have a computing code for the letter Q, and it seems to encode the number 17 as well. Trying to get you to understand that 17 and Q go hand in hand. Here they have the number 17 in reverse. The small letter Q, hex. They've got 71 as Unicode, UTF, numeric character reference, and ASCII is 17 backwards. So, what's up with the number 17? Well, I pulled up some information on the number 17, and it is a very bizarre number. It forms a twin prime with the number 19. Again, the number 19 comes up associated with the letter Q, as I just mentioned a bit ago. Twin primes with the number 19. So 17 and 19 are related. And the number 17 is the sum of the first 4 primes, which makes it very unique. The numbers 2, 3, 5, and 7 are the first 4 primes, and that added together equals 17. Within that, we have the number 237, which is the beast number. So, there's much more to this Q than meets the eye. Monkeys, number 19s, Quetzalcoatl, all kinds of bizarre esoteric history associated with the letter Q. And so after looking at all of this, you have to ask yourself, why would anyone in their right mind choose such a letter to start a movement? And that should give you some of the answers that you're looking for with relation to this. Now, what are we looking at here? Well, we're looking at an egg with a human child in utero inside the womb, looking at a serpent wrapped around it, and behind it we're looking at a reptilian eye. Now, what's up with this reptilian eye? Well, in IPEC Goat, it is featured and pictured as basically some kind of, it's the dollar is what we're looking at, the reptilian dollar. Now, for those of you that have come to this show, you understand that we have identified the dollar symbol or the dollar sign as looking like the reptile wrapped around a tree, the tree of life. And that years ago, there were 2 slashes through the dollar sign, and then that changed to 1 slash. And what that is the serpent's duality, changing duality or 2 into the 1. And all of that was outlined in the saga of the World Trade Center, the 2 towers becoming 1. World trade, money, so on and so forth. So this is what is going on with this scene. It is showing us that the reptilians control the money. The serpent controls the money. But this goes deeper because the serpent also has intertwined itself with creation. That is what the fall of man was all about. It is the big white elephant in the room that not many people will acknowledge. That the serpent had come, showed us technology, and intertwined itself with the human race. They are the tares. And they did this from the beginning of the garden. And when they did this, a salvation plan had to be forged by the Creator. And the enemy knew this all along since the beginning. He knew that a salvation plan was in effect, which is why he tried to hijack the salvation plan. He tried to overshadow the salvation plan. He tried to imprint himself and his own myths and history onto the salvation plan to deceive us all into not believing in the salvation plan, you see. So that is what is going on. Now, what am I talking about? I'm talking about Yahushua, Jesus Christ. Now, there's a lot of proof on this channel showing the proof of the one and only true God and his Son, imprinted right into our own DNA in terms of our anatomy, our physical makeup. And so I'm not going to argue that today. For those of you that want to know this proof, go to the Kingdom of Heaven Within. I have a playlist, and I outline and overlay many Bible scriptures and passages that seem to basically lay out in detail and overshadow certain anatomical features of our own inner body, things that no one could have ever known back then. So there's the proof. But the point of this still frame from IPEC Goat 2 is to demonstrate that these people have the knowledge. What you're looking at is the reptilian eye superimposed onto the womb. And, we had identified that the womb is an analogy of the eye as well. Okay? The womb is an analogy of the eye. Let me zoom this in. Let's take a closer look at this. I know I've repeated this a couple times, but I want this show to be all-inclusive. We may be on here as long as it takes to get these concepts across. Okay, so you have this television set with this serpent coming out of the bottom of it. Let's pull up another one of these images here. Here's a better wide shot of it. Okay, and this is again is a still frame from My Pet Goat. You've got this serpent television set. Lucifer transforming himself into an angel of light through this cord coming in through the back of this TV. Electricity comes in, phosphorus ignites. Phosphorus is Lucifer, the light bearer, which is the name of the element. Phosphorus ignites, and we get an image. Okay, so now the devil is making man in his own image, trying to be like the Most High, right? See how all these analogies overlay perfectly? He makes man in his own image through a television screen, just like God made man in his image through creation. And then he deceives the world because he has transformed himself into an angel of light. Light diodes being excited by electricity is what makes the image on your screen. And this is why I always tell you guys that your TV monitor, your devices, your devil's vices are basically crystal balls, okay? Which is what a crystal ball is. It shows you the past, present, and future. And this is what we're looking at here. Now, in this I Pet Goat scene, this cord comes out of the back of this thing and it wraps around the orphic egg. And we're going to get into what the orphic egg means. This is profound information, you guys. This is new. We're going to put it all together for you. And we're going to get to the bottom of this because I'm going to show you not only is this the orphic egg, which is the seed of the universe according to their theory as they try to rewrite history and rewrite creation, but it is also demonstrating to us that they know that they've infected creation with the serpent, which is why the serpent wraps around this. What you're also looking at here is the Ouroboros, the snake eating its tail. You're also looking at the female reproductive system. You're looking at the fallopian tube coming on the right here. The fall of man. Opian, which means serpent, and knowledge. Opian. And these here are the fingers of the fimbriae surrounding the egg of the woman, the ovaries and the ovum, which are the eggs that come out of the ovaries every month, are delivered into the serpent and consumed, the dust, eating dust all the days of his life. Now, this side represents the penis, okay? Because the guys aren't off the hook here. All of us have been encoded with the curse, but also the plan of salvation in our anatomy. That is the big secret that no one wants to look at. This is why the medical field is represented by the caduceus, with the serpents climbing up the pole, which almost looks exactly like a dollar symbol, right? And you're wondering why. It's because there is occult knowledge, and what we have is a hijacked version of the true knowledge of the inner body, in which they're not telling us the entire truth about this. They're only giving us bits and pieces. In fact, they're keeping us in sickness, in pharmakia, in sorcery. They're treating the symptoms instead of the problem, which is sin. Sin is the problem. Ever seen anyone get sick from the evil deeds that they do? Well, this is part of it, okay? All right. So this is what we're looking at here. I just wanted to go into this in detail before we pull up some of these other frames that I have for you guys. And I'm glad that this is all working the way it's supposed to. And let's go ahead and get into this. Okay, so what is the orphic egg? You're probably wondering, what is that? I've never heard that term before. Well, according to, now this is their knowledge, okay? I'm not signing up for this in terms of believing any of this. I'm simply recounting to you guys what these people believe, okay? And we're going to tie all this into James Alefantis and Comet Ping Pong Pizza and what all that really means, okay? Because no one really has delved into this esoteric side of what we've been experiencing with this Comet Ping Pong, Okay, well, we know one thing for sure. We know that this man has infinite resources that he's brought to bear to defend himself against what we stumbled upon. Okay, we know this. So the question becomes, why is he so important? Why was he able to get on Fox News? Why are all the major news sources covering him? And my guess is this man is a high sorcerer. My guess is that he's probably pretty closely linked to the top head honcho, Lucifer himself. So therefore, God gave us a little sneak peek into this to expose this. And of course, it becomes something that it's a mission that we accept, or we're deceived and everything falls back into the way it was. But God gives us opportunities to bring more people to him by exposing this stuff. This is why I've been on this since the beginning, okay? And this is why I'm examining the esoteric side of this, because I think this is my gifting, okay? Now let's get into what the orphic egg means and how this fits into James Alefantis, okay? In the Orphic mysteries, time, or Chronos, created the silver egg of the cosmos. Now again, this is their belief system, their rewriting of the creation story. Of course, Chronos is Saturn. It is time, ticking time, the sands of time. This is why when you look at a hourglass, the old ancient hourglasses, they look like a figure eight. That's done on purpose, because not only is sand falling through the hourglass to represent time, but you're also looking at the figure eight, the Ouroboros, the serpent eating its tail. Again, let me pull up this image so you can see that this is what is being depicted here. The Ouroboros, snake eating its tail, can be depicted in two ways. One is just a simple circle, and another is actually a figure eight going around like this. Those are the two depictions of the Ouroboros. So let's continue on with this. From this egg burst Phanes, Dionysus, or the glittering one. Now, who is Dionysus? Dionysus is the Noid. Dion is Noid backwards. The first four letters of the word Dionysus is Dion backwards. And this is where we're going to start linking in pizza, pan pizzas, and the pizza making process into this occult knowledge, which of course the pizza was called a pan. Pan means bread in Spanish, but the original name for pizza was pan. Is what they called it. Bread. Bread is pan. Flatbread is pizza. They would add toppings onto it. And this is the ancient origins of pizza. So when we think about Domino's Pizza, they have the Noid as their mascot. Well, there it is. The Noid is Dionysus, because we always have to look at the opposites to find the truth. And Noid backwards is Dion, or the first four letters of Dionysus. Now, a domino is a mask used in ancient Phoenician culture. Same masks we see in Eyes Wide Shut. That is called a domino. So now you're starting to see the picture. Domino's Pizza, the Noid. You see how all this occult stuff is linked right into a famous food chain, okay? Let's keep going with this, because it says Larousse, chaos, which came from Chronos, was surrounded by night, which formed the enveloping cover under which, by the creative action of either cosmic matter was slowly organized. Okay, so this is the theory of how everything came into creation. This finally assumed the shape of an egg, of which night formed the shell. New film coming out in March called Ghost in the Shell. See how all this is fitting together? In the center of the gigantic egg, which lower section was the earth, was born the first being, Phanes the light. It was Phanes who, by unison with night, created heaven and earth. In the orphic primordial egg, it is division which sets creation into motion. This is what they think, that the darkness is necessary for the light. This is what the devil is trying to do, is justify the necessity of him being here, even though the Bible tells us that there is no room for sin in this universe and it will be eradicated. But the devil wants you to believe that it is necessary. Now, as I'm reading this, I want you to take careful note. Maybe even look at this and take some notes, because we're going to link all this back into James Alefantis, okay? It says here, as a result of the splitting, there is polarity, night and day, black and white. The egg, in effect, contained both male and female potential. Okay. In some versions of the orphic creation, Phanes is bisexual. I wanted you to understand this point. The Phanes and Pan, it says here, he is also depicted with cloven hooves, showing him as Pan, that these are hermaphroditic, bisexual individuals. Other orphic motifs found, for example, on alabaster bowls include the serpent, another symbol closely connected with the egg. For example, in the figure of the serpent Ouroboros, which we just covered. Serpent Ouroboros, serpent eating the egg. See this? The serpent who bites his own tail. The Ouroboros, like the egg, forms a sphere or circular shape. The symbol of original perfection. See how they're making the serpent sound like a good thing? I.e., before the division of splitting or creation. Circle, sphere, and round all are aspects of the self-contained, which is without beginning and end. In its pre-worldly perfection, it is prior to any process eternal, for in its roundness there is no before and no after, no time, and there is no above and no below, no space. Now this is false. This is false. Because what this really creates is a prison. This is the prison. There is no escape from time, from chronos. You just keep eating the dust over and over again. All of us are recycled dust, okay? Born out of our dead ancestors' graves, basically, in the cycle of time. This is why God told the serpent that he would eat dust the days of his life. We are locked in the prison. Okay, so what is the prison, Casey? Well, we see the prison manifested all around us. You'll even notice that on this page it's showing us the serpent. Sorry about the sound, you guys. The heater kicked on. That's why you're hearing that. The serpent skin of the snake is right here in the borders of this very blog post here. Okay. This is the prison. This is the reason for the prison. Okay, so the serpent is basically the leader of this prison. Here's a skin. It looks like a hexagon. Okay, what else is a hexagon in this prison of reality that we live in? Honeycombs are manifesting the prison bars of our reality. Okay, they self-organize. These bees self-organize in the honeycomb matrix. Why? Because these are the language or the borders of our reality. Okay, it's not that bees are evil. It's just this is our reality. We're stuck in sin, the serpent sin, the sine wave, which is a bell curve, the ball curve, which is the serpent, right? What else manifests hexagonally in this matrix? Snowflakes. All snowflakes are based off of the hexagon pattern. You see how we're starting to understand the very boundaries of this reality through knowing these things? And it, again, doesn't mean that snow is evil, because God talks about snowflakes or snow in the Bible. It's talked about in the Bible that he created this, but everything is seen through the lens of the sin, through the lens of the curse or the hex. Exactly. Thanks, Truth Brown. You get it. It's the hex. Now, this is crazy because I've told you guys before that I believe that our our universe is an analogy of the eye. Now there are two eyes. You have good and the eye of evil. Obviously, this is the eye of evil, the serpent eye. So now that you understand the hex and what it means, we can continue on with how the serpent is trying to rewrite history, okay? It says, all this can only come with the coming of the light of consciousness. See how all this is? It's not about that. It's about the way out, Jesus Christ. Okay, but they want you to believe that if we can get smarter and smarter and have more technology and more knowledge, that we're going to be able to surpass and transcend death. That is what the devil wants you to believe, okay? Now, how does James Alefantis fit into all this? Well, he produced a couple films. One of the films was called Chapel Perilous, in which they talk about the cosmic serpent. Yes, in the actual film, they mention the book called The Cosmic Serpent. They also show a snake several times throughout the short film. Once a man opens a box and the snake pops out, and at the end, a snake is crawling up her breast, just like the snake we saw crawling up the breast and head of Marina Abramovich. These people all know each other, make no mistake, okay? So, what does the snake mean? Well, we just explained it to you. It's the cosmic serpent. It is the orphic egg, okay? Now, how does this fit more into James Alefantis? Well, he did, in that film called Chapel Perilous, they also talk about the serpent seed and being infected. And then a man is actually infected and he grows the goat horns of Pan himself, the god Pan. Horns grow out of his head. And a man in the film says, you've been infected. Okay. This was produced by James Alefantis himself. James Alefantis also produced another film called Automatic at Sea. This is the movie poster for Automatic at Sea. Can't make this up, you guys. And there you see the Ouroboros again, the serpent eating its tail. You see the dark side and the light side. You see the one-eye symbolism all encompassing this. Of course, this is Saturn. That's what Saturn is. Saturn is the Ouroboros around the ball Earth, which is the lie. And so the rings of Saturn form the Ouroboros around the planet. Now, these are things you have never heard before, okay? But when you put it all together, it all falls exactly into place. So Automatic at Sea was another one of the Alefantis produced films. Now, what is the sea? What does the sea represent? Again, the sea is the womb. This is why everything is done in maritime law, admiralty law. Us being born into this world, we automatically become part of the corporation, okay? And I just showed you how the orphic egg also represents Pan. The two are associated with one another. So now we have all of the elements. Now is where the rubber hits the road. This is where it gets crazy. Because what you're looking at these fingers are not only representative of the fimbriae, the finger-like projections reaching out from the fallopian tube, but these also look like Washington monuments, Washington, D.C. And there is where the rubber hits the road. Right there is your side-by-side. Those look like the Washington monument. Panspermia also dovetails into this theory of the cosmic serpent. What is panspermia? Panspermia is the theory that through a ping pong ball-like effect, that the universe was seeded from life. In other words, asteroids, comets, planetoids bouncing off of one another is what ricocheting throughout the universe is what infected life throughout the universe. That is the theory.
Well, what does that mean? Well, of course, that theory is false, but it is the serpent's precursor to the grand deception. Okay, the grand deception is going to manifest itself as we are just aliens from another world. Okay, but in order to say that they're aliens from another world, they have to have a theory behind it that they've brainwashed us all with, that they came from another planet. Okay, and how did they come from another planet? Well, life is ricocheting throughout the universe through through collisions with planetoids, comets, ping pong effect, comet, ping pong, pizza. It says here the world egg, cosmic egg, or mundane egg is a mythological motif found in the creation myths of many cultures and civilizations. Typically, the world egg is a beginning of some sort in the universe or some primordial being coming into existence by hatching from the egg, sometimes laying on the primordial waters of earth. Vedic mythology says that one of the earliest ideas of egg-shaped cosmos comes from the sort of Sanskrit scriptures. This is the Vedic. The Greek mythology says the orphic egg in the ancient Greek orphic tradition is the cosmic egg from which hatched the primordial hermaphroditic deity, Phanes, Protagonus, variously equated also with Zeus, Pan, Metis, Eros, Bromius. Okay? The egg is often depicted with the serpent wound around it. Many threads of earlier myths are apparent in the new tradition. Phanes is believed to have been hatched from the world egg of Kronos. Just told you about all that, right? How all that links together. Time. This is Saturn, which, by the way, has at its North Pole a hexagon. That's the hex. It says here his older wife Nyx called him protogenius. As she created nighttime, he created daytime. He has also created the method of creation by mingling. He was made the ruler of the deities, passed the scepter. The Orphic tradition states that Nyx later gave the scepter to her son Uranus before it passed to Kronos and then to Zeus, who then retained it. Egyptian mythology. This is where things get interesting. In the original myth concerning the Ogdoad, the world arose from the waters as a mound of dirt. Now, here's where they try to mix in truth with lies. This mound of dirt is the convex lens of the inner eye. This is the shape of our world, make no mistake. It's like a drop of water standing on a table. This is the convex lens Earth, and I went into more detail on this with the show that Dabu is going to upload probably today, where we went into the nitty-gritty of world history and tried to piece together the truth. It says it was deified as Hathor, this mound of dirt. Ra was contained within an egg laid upon this mound by a celestial bird. In the earliest version of this myth, the bird is a goose. It is not explained where the goose originates. However, after the rise of the cult of Thoth, the egg was said to have been a gift from Thoth and laid by an ibis, the bird with which it is associated. So I'm looking at I Pet Goat directly after that scene with the eye and the womb, and I see this child on the ground, right? Now, this child's head was the egg that we saw with the serpent wrapped around it. It cracks open. You can see it cracked open in the background. It becomes the child's head, and then on the ground here, you see drugs and needles. See this here? You see drugs and needles, pills. This looks like some white pills. These are needle tips. This is a green pill.
This is made of the same alloy as the superloop at Fun Universe. It's solid steel, Mr. F. Feel it? Indeed it is. Now, watch.
Listen.
This device, when activated, sets up a specific pattern of ultrasonic vibrations. Observe.
Listen.
Even as we talk, the molecular structure of this solid piece of steel is being rearranged, creating what is known as metal fatigue. Nothing appears to be happening. Oh, that's the beauty of it. I like it, Mr. Pins. You like this part even better, Mr. F.
Says right here, main building block of One World Trade Center is the antiprism. It's called the square antiprism to be more exact. Then one of you guys said, logo looks like a sulfur molecule, which looks like the One World Trade Freedom Tower. And boom, here is the bombshell. There it is right there. This is from the Wonder Woman 2017 movie Wikipedia page. And they mention the sulfur molecule.
Morning. Well, the premise is quite simple. Take something designed by nature and reprogram it to make it work for the body rather than against it.
You're talking about a virus?
Indeed, yes, in this case the measles. Program it to make it at a genetic level to be helpful rather than harmful. Your body is a highway, and you picture the virus as a very fast car being driven by a very bad man.
And there you have Will Smith in the snake, the serpent, in the very fast car that she described. And that's how this Cyrus spread across the world, so we're told. He pulls in underneath the crown, crowning himself the serpent. This on the heels of the 13-day New York, New Rochelle lockdown. 13 days, 13 years ago, this film came out. From March 12th through the 25th is the New Rochelle lockdown. The lockdown that would kick off all other lockdowns. It was the first.
Imagine the damage that car could cause. But then if you replace that man with a cop, essentially what we've done. 1,009 clinical trials in humans so far.
10,009 clinical trials. There's your COVID-19.
And how many are cancer-free?
10,009.
So you have actually cured cancer?
Yes, yes.
There's your crown right there, hiding in plain sight. So, I looked up Crippen. You know, the woman that you just saw, that the Cyrus was named after in the film. and I found something that gave me chills. And he just so happens to be a guy who discovered that chickens produced nitrous oxide as part of their immune system to kill the kahuna in real life. Let's take a look at this. This blew me away. This is a study that talks all about the kahuna. This study was dated 2017, August 1st. Avian, which are birds, this is a whole study on chickens. Avian means birds. I'll help you guys with this. Are known to produce antiviral molecules such as nitrous oxide and type 1 IFN. These two immune mediators are well known for their innate host responses against kahuna.
He looks like a crown. I said, this is the devil's crown, you guys. Like it sure is.
Now, the World Slave Center originated out of coin-op machines. That was the original purpose when legislation was brought to bear to bring the World Slave Center into existence. As crazy as that sounds, it started with coin-op machines. These were the new technology at the time, and they were looking to take this internationally, and they needed a center of trade. In fact, the New York state government approved the plans for a World Slave Center on the very day that Bush Jr. was born into this world. The day and year, July 6, 1946. Bush Sr. was just starting at Yale. He was in his 20s when his son was born, the very president under which the towers would fall. Is this a coincidence? Well, as we get further into this documentary, you're going to understand that there are no coincidences. Now, the person who passed this legislation, his name was Dewey, Thomas Dewey, and the Bushes openly admit their connections to this Thomas Dewey, the very man that would establish the World Slave Center, was worshipped by the entire Bush family. Now, to put this in perspective, a man who the Bush family worshipped, who tried to run for president himself in New York, who approved the board of directors for the concept of the World Slave Center on the day that Bush was born, and he would be the president under which they would fall. This is insane that nobody saw these connections earlier. Now, within this same decade of the infant stages of the World Slave Center, Trump was attending a school, Q Forest. And by the time I end up explaining to you what Q is, you will wonder if it relates back to the Q that we are talking about today, QAnon. Now, Q schools had their roots in secret societies, and they were fashioned after Marxists, Wilhelm Wundt, John Dewey, which supposedly is a different Dewey than the Thomas Dewey that we mentioned earlier, G. Stanley Hall, and Hegelian ideologies. These were the roots of the Q schools that Trump attended. Trump's father was actually on the board of directors for the grammar school that Trump went to. He was heavily involved, and he donated to the construction of a wing while Trump was there in grade school, pre-teen. Q would then become the basis for the entire restructured educational system in America. Yale developed the strategy of how to control through education, and Q schools were the implementation of those strategies. The philosophy was, in these schools, is that we are cattle, essentially. and that education is merely seen as a mind control tool to prepare people to be slaves, rather than to find their full potential in life and utilize their true gifts. We were talking about this serpent on a pole. I was also talking to you about the squid and copper-based organisms that have blue inside of them, and that blue is the copper. That's blue bloods. And those organisms that have the blue have attributes about them that match their blood. Instead of hemoglobin, they have a copper-based blood. Instead of iron, they have copper. And they have, like, for instance, the squid has blue ink, the blue crabs. All of these are copper-based organisms. Some centipedes are copper-based as well as spiders. Well, this is what we found. The serpent, the word for serpent, nakash, is almost the same word for bronze. This is shocking. This is the word nakash for serpent. And when you look at bronze or brass, that word is nakosheth. So we have nakosheth and nakash. And now we begin to understand that the bronze serpent is depicting the unclean blood. Now, this is interesting because, I'll get to the point here, the word for brass or copper is nakosheth. Nakash is almost the same word as nakosheth. So the serpent and the copper are almost one and the same word. Squids, they give off this cephalopod ink, and that in fact the ink is blue. Squid ink is blue-black. It's blue because this is a copper-based organism. Now, if you click on this, it will tell you that the word for brass actually means dubious. It can meaning dubious. Copper means unclean. Filthiness, right here, is in Ezekiel it's used as. So why would God have the Israelites stare at a copper serpent to be saved? And if they didn't, they would die. Because they had just got done complaining about being in the wilderness and being better off in Egypt, where they came from, where all the blue bloods were. So God was teaching them a lesson. So that if this is what you want to go back to, let's put this serpent back up on the pole and show you where you came from and remind you of how you were delivered out of Egypt.
The copper IUD is the serpent beast in the womb. This is the story of the copper IUD. The serpent coiled around the T. 1988 is when the copper IUD began being marketed in the United States. And bronze is 88% copper. And it says, "Then the Lord sent venomous snakes among them. They bit the people, and many Israelites died. The people came to Moses and said, 'We sinned when we spoke against the Lord and against you. Pray that the Lord will take the snakes away from us.' So Moses prayed for the people. The Lord said to Moses, 'Make a snake and put it on a pole. Anyone who is bitten can look at it and live.' So Moses made a bronze snake. Bronze is 88% copper. And he put it on the pole. And then anyone who was bitten by a snake and looked at the bronze snake, they lived." Now Jesus addresses this in his words, in his own words. He says, "Just as Moses lifted up the snake in the wilderness, so the Son of Man must be lifted up." And so you see, we have a juxtaposition. We have the blue bloods, the copper-based blood that the Israelites had to look upon to live. And then we had the iron-based pure blood of Christ that corrects our blood. you see. So they were out of Egypt. In the womb, the copper serpent killed them. And that's exactly what the copper IUD does in the womb. Here it is, Paragard, and it is the #1 copper IUD in the world. And when you take this word Paragard and you reverse it, it says drag, A-R-A-P, dragon with, because the word para means with. And so what it really means is with the dragon. So there you have it, you guys. The root word of dragon is drag, as you can see here. Draco, dragon, dragoon, drag. It's all here. Paragard, backwards, is with the dragon. It's coiled like a serpent, self-described right here in their own words. Coiled together, coiled like a serpent. This is it, wrapped around the pole, just as it is in the Bible. Came to market in the United States in 1988. Bronze is 88% copper. It's all there. Mechanism of action, preventing pregnancy. It is the serpent within the womb. Now, we told you that the fallopian tubes represented the serpent eating the dust of the ovaries, the days of its life, the curse placed on it, and that the anatomy of our body tells us the story of the fall of man. When we were given our flesh suits, God wanted to ensure that it was encoded so that one day we could find the truth. Now, this is the man that invented the IUD. His name is Ernest Grafenberg, known to have discovered the G-spot. Now, 2 people are infected on the expedition, one through the ear and one through the nose. So we're getting like the 5 senses. We saw the eyes, the ears, and now the nose, the smell. Now, in this portion of the movie, I told you guys about the canopic jars of ancient Egypt. These were the jars that they put all of the organs, internal organs of the Egyptian pharaohs into, that would then reduce down to a DNA of black goo. Well, that is what's being represented here, as he unleashes this weapon onto these ancient peoples. Basically, it is a bunch of canopic jars, released down with the black goo inside. Here you see they show it falling as a DNA helix. These to me look like structures of the inner brain, maybe. So we begin to see this weapon dropped, which is the black DNA. It's the black goo, the fallen angel DNA falling onto the peoples to contaminate them and cause havoc. And in fact, the alien was definitely a weapon of sorts. Now, we're going to start this out that I did in this program, and we're going to be digging deeper into this program a little bit later in the show, after we go over some of these bloodlines and families who is basically being emulated here in the iconography of the layout of this particular school. And everybody can read, so I don't need to say the name. And if you're getting caught up, this is the crown of serpent. We did another video on this yesterday, and we're going to just talk more about it. We're going to be thorough and specific, show the proof. Now, this is breaking information. No one had really discovered this yet, but this is a crown serpent. It is a symbol of some family crests and heraldry in the Milan Italian families. There are several families. We're going to go over some of those. But basically, this is used in the family crests. It's also used
on a famous car manufacturer's symbol as well. And it is a serpent eating a child with a crown on it. We're also going to get into some of the actual roots of why they may have redesigned the school in this fashion. Because originally the school was designed around a different serpent called Quetzalcoatl, which is directly linked into this serpent, this crown serpent, which is called the Bisconi. We're going to get into that as well in more detail. But I wanted to show you these overlays so that you can see this isn't some kind of psychosis. Here in this one, you can actually see the eye and this little ear-like structure built right into the parking lot. Here's a good frame of it here. You can see the dog ear there with the eye in front of it, the snout. And then it's weird because this area out here in the trees looks a lot like the child in the jaws of this serpent. We're going to get into much higher detail on this. We're going to zoom in. I'm going to show you how this is exactly what they were trying to emulate when they rebuilt the school. Now, again, this is breaking information because basically this this level of construction has just been completed. This is not this parking lot. You know, see how these stalls form the teeth, the actual teeth of this serpent. It's got the jaws locked in here. There's a good image of it there. The teeth form the parking stalls. So I put together this overlay image of the school by going over the Bisconi archetype. Here's the word. Okay, this means the viper, and it's used on heraldic, like different labels and things for different family names. Now, there's something about this, and I'm going to basically scroll down to the images of what this symbol is before I show you where I found this symbol. This is it here. It is a serpent depicted with a crown on its head, consuming a child. Now, this may sound very disturbing, but you haven't even heard the half of it yet. So this is the seal. And again, it is a crowned serpent. Now, what is up with this seal and why is it so important? Why are we talking about this? There's some history behind this. There's family bloodlines that are actually local to this area that I'm living in now. This is Inter Milan. They also use the Bisconi as their logo. As you can see here, this is a soccer team. Now, this by itself doesn't really mean a whole lot because this Bisconi is also used with cars. It is actually a logo for a car as well. It's a crowned serpent. Here it is here. This is actually the soccer team. Animals are often used to represent football clubs in Italy, which is soccer, and we call football soccer in America. The grass snake called Bisconi or Serpente represents Inter. The snake is an important symbol for the city of Milan. Milanese heraldry, okay? So this is a symbol. The disturbing part about this, though, is that it is consuming a child. Now, much of the interpretations of this, or iterations, I should say, of this Bisconi symbol have been softened. Some have taken the child and the man out of the mouth of the serpent and used other objects, okay? Here's Alfa Romeo. They also use the Bisconi. It is a symbol of Italy. Now, here's where things get interesting. Here are some more images, close-up images of this Bisconi. I believe this links into the Catholic Church. I want you to imprint this image on your mind of what you're looking at here. A serpent with a crown on its head. Now, to my knowledge, what I'm about to show you next, no one has seen yet, and maybe it's out of fear of retaliation or whatever the case may be. And I know it's taking me a minute to get to the point, but I have to show you all of this imagery first before you can understand what you're looking at. I'm going to flash it on the screen very quickly because in this day and age, there's censorship and you're not allowed to talk about certain topics. Now, this is from Israel Zeus talking about the Bisconi bloodlines, how it is indicative to the Sforza and Visconti families. This is where we get into mob connections, where a serpent is eating a child on the coat of arms, displays their wicked nature. This article also talks about the media and how these bloodline families control the media. And in here, they actually mention Handy Sook, we're going to call it. So, Casey, what's the big thing that could put your life in danger? Now, I can't say anything about this image. All I can do is show it. And for those of you with eyes to see, you know exactly what you're looking at. You're looking at a crowned serpent. You can see the eyes here. You can see the crown becomes the buildings and the serpentine-like projection coming off the bottom of this image. I'm going to zoom it in a bit. And when you put all the puzzle pieces together, who in their right mind would come up with a design like this? Now, what makes this interesting is that this used to be the feathered serpent. For those of you that remember, we did a lot of work on this channel showing the 188th ley line, showing the actual ley line that goes right through the cornerstone of the school, a school, we'll call it, and how the temple of the feathered serpent of Quetzalcoatl actually falls on this ley line. Some other people discovered this as well. They showed the similarities between the temple of the feathered serpent down in Mexico, how it falls on the 188th ley line. There's actually a channel called 188th Ley Line, I believe the name of the channel was. I haven't heard from that channel in a while. It's been years. But all of this was documented, that this particular school fell on this ley line that shared the same ley line as the temple of the feathered serpent. Everybody thought we were crazy because we were comparing this to that. And now it has been transformed into a crowned serpent, relating very closely to a local family that actually controls the media. According to this Bishoni Bloodlines blog here that was uploaded, looks like February 25th, 2019, so not too long ago. This is interesting. All this is coming to fruition, and it's built right into the floor, into the layout of the actual school. I promised I was going to keep this short. I wanted to show you guys the information. Hopefully this gets sent around and spread so that people can understand what is going on here. This goes on a very deep level. Why would you design this like this? Why? It makes absolutely no sense. I can't be the only one who sees what we're looking at here. Let's do some side by sides before we end this live show, so you guys can understand what I was looking at when I actually looked at the image. Now, the interesting thing is I looked at the image on the map, on Google Maps, and then I said, I just typed in the word crowned serpent, and all this came up. That can't be an accident. So here's the side by side. Well, there are some families that were actually involved in this symbol, which is the, let's pull it up here, Visconti. Okay, this is the family crest. Several families share this symbol. The Visconti family, the Bishonis, as well as the Sforzas. Now, this isn't to say that every single person in these families knows exactly what's going on here, but these are the family crests. And that is what we're seeing in the bird's eye view above the school. I'm going to show you how that links in to the 188th ley line. Now, these are some images from God Code Matrix of the 188, who discovered that there was a ley line that goes over the ocean all the way through Stonehenge. It goes right through the circle of Stonehenge, connects some of these events that have happened in the past, and it goes through the cornerstone of the former Handy Suk School, and it goes through Teotihuacan, Mexico, where there is an actual temple that very closely resembles the Handy Suk School in its design, layout, and structure. And this particular ancient society in Mesoamerica had a symbol that they used as well, and that is the same image: a serpent eating a person, a crowned serpent eating a person. So we have a connection. We have an ancient symbol on a ley line of a serpent eating a person that had previously been connected to this school, and the redesign of the school is the same serpent, just in a different iteration. This is Quetzalcoatl, and this is the feathered serpent of the 188th ley line. So all they did was repackage in plain sight the image. And remember, the Prometheus fountain is 16 feet wide, and the Esplanade walkway leading to it is 61 meters long. So we have this 1661 mirror. Now here's where things get interesting, because Prometheus sits in a ring, and from above he forms the letter Q with his hand outstretched outside the ring. The Prometheus statue was created by a company in Queens, and there are what are called maquettes of the statue that were made. Lots of Q's surrounding Prometheus, the god who gave fire to man. Well, Quetzalcoatl was also said to have given fire to man before he was adorned in turquoise, placed in a stone chest, and lit on fire to become a morning star. And the Rockefeller Prometheus often appears adorned in turquoise light, just like Quetzalcoatl, within a stone chest. The fountain is set ablaze in bronze, just like Quetzalcoatl. As punishment for giving men fire, Prometheus had his liver eaten out by an eagle throughout eternity. Well, we have another synchronicity, because Q was transfigured into a harpy eagle when he became a morning star. And before Q died, he hid his treasure in a water palace by the reeds. Can you see the water palace and the reeds in the Prometheus statue? And both Rockefeller and Quetzalcoatl altars are both called sunken plazas. Is Quetzalcoatl But if you look at the first mentions of Cain, you'll begin to understand that Cain's actual name begins with the letter Q. So we're going to dig into that. We're also going to examine the letter Q as it relates to the eye of the needle, which was the original meaning, which is like the gate to another world. We're going to look at Q at CERN as well. And then at the last part of the show, we're going to look at the defunct, quote unquote, Texas super collider. And I say quote unquote because there seems to be some weather warfare that relates to this Texas super collider in the way that these hurricanes are spinning into Texas. And we're going to do some overlays and try to get down to the bottom of that. So let's get into the letter Q and go all the way back to the beginning with Cain and ancient Egypt. Now, as we began the show, I talked to you about how Cain's name actually begins with the letter Q. His name is actually spelled Cain. And of course, he is the evil twin brother of Adam. We can call him a half brother, in my opinion. Here is the spelling here. Cain, Q-A-Y-I-N. And the actual letter is this letter here. You can't probably see that on your screen, but we're going to dig into this particular letter. Now, when you look here, this is actually the history of the letter Q. And I'm going to verify all this information. We're not going to use Wikipedia as our only source. But we're going to check the footnotes that are in here and the sources. And this goes back all the way to ancient Egypt. Here's the ancient hieroglyph. WJ. We're going to dig into this. Here's the Phoenician, Quoth. And then the Etruscan, the Greek, Quappa. We're also going to look at the Hebrew. Now, as it says here, the Semitic sound value of Quap was Q, and the form of the letter could have been based on the eye of a needle, a knot. Now, this part's interesting because what you're dealing with here is a gate. Now, we know that the Egyptians had a fascination with the underworld. I'm going to show you images of that and how it relates to the letter Q. But this eye of the needle basically it sounds like they are talking about a gate to another world. The knot is used in other antiquity as well as a symbol for gates going to other worlds. In the ancient Celts, they have knots, infinity knots, and these are like gates to other worlds. So the eye of the needle, of course, Christ talked about a camel passing through the eye of a needle to get to heaven, and that it was almost impossible for a rich man to go to heaven. Compared it to a camel going through the eye of a needle. Well, that's a gate. The getting to heaven is going through a gate. That's the gate going up, but there's also a gate to the underworld as well. So this Q carries the inference of some type of gate going from one place to another. Now, if you look at diagrams of CERN, what you're going to notice is that it also looks like a gate. Let me pull this up here. So the original letter Q looked like this. It had this loop here. Looking for a bigger image of it here on this page. Which I thought there was, but let me see. Let's scroll down here. Sign language. Okay, the original images of the letter Q had this loop, this serif, okay? These were some of the original images in the English, anyway. And when you look at images of CERN, which many people believe is like a gate, a black hole to the underworld, you get this same Q-like appearance, okay? you have a small collider within a larger collider. Here's the basic map. There's a little bit more to it. There are some smaller circles here, smaller colliders that help spin up these particles to get them to go into the Large Hadron Collider. But as you can see, the basic shape is a cube, okay? A gate to another world. And, you know, they don't really shy away from these rumors and theories of them possibly opening a black hole. It's almost like they feed off of it. And they know that that's very possible, that that's what could happen. And I believe that they're actually trying to do this. Here's a good image here showing the layout of CERN that is Q, very Q-like, okay? Now let's keep going with this because this goes very, very deep, you guys. We've got the Q, the serif Q. We've got the gate references in the Bible, passing through the eye of the needle, and the ancient hieroglyphs that look like something passing through the eye of a needle, a gate. And they talk about that that's what it means, the original hieroglyphs. Some have even suggested that the form of the letter Q is even more ancient. It could have originated from Egyptian hieroglyphs, as you can see here. Now this is Qaf. This is the Phoenician, as I showed you a little bit earlier. And they confirm what we were talking about Cain. It represents the C or the K, e.g. Cain for Hebrew, Cain or Kenan for Kenan, out of Genesis 4:1. Here's the letter here. These are larger images of it. And this is what we see in the actual Genesis account. This is how they spell Cain's name. This is the first letter in Cain's name. So, Cain was the evil brother. He represented the enmity between the two seeds that basically went on throughout the entire Bible. Adam's seed against Cain's seed. This was the big white elephant in the room that really no Christian denominations really focus on. This original prophecy of the Bible in Genesis, the enmity between two seeds, and how that played out. The Israelites versus the Canaanites, all the way down to when Jesus walked the earth. And he called out the Pharisees and he said, "You are of your father, the devil." He was talking about the bloodlines. They were the fake Jews. That's who he was calling out. Now this goes deeper. Let's make sure we're connected first before I go on. Thanks for watching, everyone. Hit the thumbs up button so everyone knows that we're here. Otherwise, people don't know we're here. So we talked about Cain. We talked about ancient Egypt and the Hebrew letter as well. And so that's the history of the letter Q. Now, before we go on, we have to state that the discovery has already been made that America was not named after Americo Vespucci, as we're told. Rather, it was named after the feathered serpent. And we're going to link that into this discussion as well. So in effect, we can call America Quetzalcoatl. I want you to take a look at these images of Quetzalcoatl that I'm going to pull up on the screen here. Oh, we've got some more images of this Q before we move on here. This is hieroglyphs to Hebrew to English, okay? So this is another historical timeline of the letter Q as it has come down through the ages. This is showing ancient Egyptian, 1850 BC. So you guys can see this. This is Hebrew, and this is Q Mosaic Hebrew, Paleo Hebrew, so that's 550 BC, just before Christ walked the earth. And then it comes down to English. And as you can see, the roots of this go all the way back to ancient Egypt. Here is some more images of this letter in ancient Egypt. Now, this particular explanation talks about this letter Q being a cord wound on a stick, almost like something you would see like a serpent wrapped around a pole. Cord wound around a stick. Here's another variant of it as well. This is out of Middle Egyptian, an introduction to the language and culture of hieroglyphs. So you have this eye of the needle, cord wrapped around a stick, which is like a spiral, which represents like a gate. And then when we link that into Quetzalcoatl, we see that he was often characterized as a gate as well. Now, this is interesting because when you think about the eye of the needle and some of the structures of the inner eye, you can see that this hyaloid canal almost forms the same image of this letter Q. So the Q is almost like an eye. We've told you that the eye is a gate. The kingdom of heaven is within. You can either go within or you can look outwards into the material realm, and that's where you get tripped up. This is where you get deceived, looking in the material realm rather than the spiritual realm. We've covered all this in the body code series about this narrow gate, right? And now we're getting confirmation that the ancient Egyptians knew about this, except their gate was to the underworld through human sacrifice, as was Quetzalcoatl. It was all about sacrifice, bringing forth demons, and going to the underworld rather than the gate to heaven, the narrow gate. Now you see how this all fits in with what Jesus was talking about the eye of a needle. He knew about Cain. He knew about the gate. He knew about the letter Q. That's why he talked about the eye of the needle, which is in essence the letter Q. And he talked about camels going through it, right? Or not going through it. Now, we're going to switch gears here, and I'm going to take you into this program. If I can pull this off here. Let's go in here. Give me a second. All right. We're going to be in here for a bit. And I want you to look at this ancient Egyptian letter Q. Okay. There it is there. It's blown up. It's kind of fuzzy. But I put it on an angle so you can see the similarities between this and the Eye of Ra. There's much more to this Eye of Ra that we're going to talk about in a minute. This is mind-blowing. But look at this. You can almost see the letter Q in this Eye of Ra. Let's do this. See this here? This is unbelievable. Now, I don't think anyone's discovered this yet. Look at that. This almost looks like that's what they were shooting for, which would be a gate, right? Now you see all this fits together. The human eye being gates either within or looking out. Looking out leads you to destruction. Looking in leads you to the gate to heaven. Now, I have this ancient image of Quetzalcoatl next to this Eye of Ra because I wanted to show you the similarities between this Eye of Ra and Quetzalcoatl. And this is stunning. Look at how this arches over here. Let's blow this up a little bit. Q, the ancient Egyptian letter. Here, Quetzalcoatl, and the Eye of Ra. They're all related. And of course, this represents, a lot of people believe this is the central part of the brain where the pineal gland sits, which is the true eye. But Christ says that your eye can either be full of darkness or full of light. What do you mean, Casey? Well, it's right there in the New Testament. Christ says the eye is the lamp of the body. Let your eye be single and your whole body will be full of light. But if your eye is dark, your whole body will be full of darkness. Well, what do you think you're going to get if you're sacrificing humans, enslaving them? Your eye is going to be full of darkness, right? If your eye is full of light, you're going to be more Christ-like. You're going to try to follow Christ's example of how he walked on this earth. Now, we're told, again, that these two races are unrelated, that the ancient Aztecs had nothing to do with the Egyptians, but yet here we see all these similarities, okay? Here you see almost this Q-like handle here, okay? This is an image of Quetzalcoatl, right? And you also see, more importantly, these images of Ra with this circle with a serpent on the front of it. And just to compare, here's images of Ra, okay? He's got this circle, which is supposed to be the sun, with the serpent in the front, right? And then when you compare that to these images of ancient Quetzalcoatl, they're almost the same. There's some here, and let's scroll down. I think there's more. Oh, there's some back here. Look at this. There's a serpent on the front of like a sun or a round object. So no doubt these two ancient cultures were related. How? We don't know. But this would suggest that maybe these people had a different form of transportation, some kind of ancient portals, is what I'm guessing. And I'll be back in the chat in a minute, you guys. Okay, let's close some of these windows up. Now, what else do we have here? Here are some other ancient hieroglyphs. This is from ancient Egypt. And now that you know what we know about the Eye of Ra and that it possibly contains the ancient letter Q, which is a gate or a portal, we can now see how they're depicting the path of the sun. They've got these eyes of Ra here and here, which I believe, again, really represent gates to the underworld. You've got the sun image here, which Ra was the sun god. You got the sun rising up, these baboons. These symbols basically are Q as well. As you can see here, let me see if I can pull this up. Oops, that's the wrong one. As you can see here, the Greek quappa, okay, looks a lot like what they're depicting here in these ancient hieroglyphs. Which basically means a gate. Here they show it as a shin ring. All that the sun circles. So you got these Q-like images here. A quappa or the rising sun is how they're explaining it. But until you understand what's going on here, that this entire image is basically showing us gates, the letter Q, you really can't understand what you're looking at. Now, of course, here's the beetle, okay? The dung beetle, which they believe pushed the ball of the sun across the sky, across the horizon. Okay. But there's more to this, because this beetle that actually flies, this dung beetle, and they have images of this dung beetle with its wings out. This is a archetypal image of the dung beetle. And we've done research on these frequencies and resonant frequencies that I believe this is how these things fly. Okay. I believe that they use wings for steering, but basically they're flying using resonant frequencies. Something is vibrating within them, which then reaches a certain frequency, and they become one with the ether, so to speak. There's proof of this. Anatomically, bumblebees shouldn't be able to fly, but yet they do. Their wings aren't big enough to support their weight. There's another factor. You can also go right here on YouTube and you can see images of flies without wings seeming to levitate off of the ground. If you put it in slow motion, you can actually see it. And if someone had a super slow motion camera and could film something like this, we'd be able to prove it. But I don't have the means to do that. But if someone has a super slow motion camera, I mean, I'd hate to tell people, advocate for people to tear the wings off of a fly, but it could easily be proven. And I've seen it myself. But the quality was so low quality, I showed it, but people are like, they still don't want to believe it, right? There's some other factor. The flies aren't jumping. They're levitating. They just get off the ground and then they realize they don't have wings and then they just fall right back down. But they seem to almost hold in the air for a split second as they jump off the ground, which doesn't make any sense unless you account for resonant frequencies. So I believe that's where the scarab beetle comes in to play. The fact that it can move these giant dung balls, maybe they're actually resonating with some kind of frequency, these dung balls, right? Some of you are like, what are you talking about? Okay, dung beetle. Let's look at some images. Some of you are not aware of this. Here's a dung beetle. This is what they're representing in their ancient Egyptian hieroglyphs. They can push this ball around many times the size. Okay, so let's think about this for a second. The ancient Egyptian pyramids were built with these large, massive stones that cannot be moved. Maybe all of this is what this really means. That they use these resonant frequencies to move these large objects. Maybe that is the mechanism by which this dung beetle can fly as well as push these large objects around. And maybe the ancient Egyptians somehow tapped into this power and were able to build the pyramids with it. Now, these are just theories, but now you can understand how they would think that this same power is what pushes the sun, which is the large object in the sky. You see? So all this begins to fit together when you think outside of what we're already told. And instead you begin to think for yourself. Make sure we're connected and we'll keep going with this because there's a couple of other things I want to show you guys. You guys hit the thumbs up button, please. Here's another ancient image. And what we're told here is that this mound of creation at the beginning of time is what is pictured here, and that this is where the sun came out of. This is what we're told. And that this central circle represents the mound. This upper area here represents the rising sun based on this diagram. Horizon at the sunrise, okay? So this says. So let's keep going with this. So this is the horizon, the sunrise. These are we're told, are the stages of the sun. Now this is interesting because the sun rises, but they're showing it going downward, like almost like into the abyss. Then they're pouring what looks to be like sand around the edges of the enclosed world. Now, this isn't a globe that you're looking at, I believe. I believe this is the circle of the earth. And that this sand represents maybe the silicone firmament. I believe the firmament is made out of silicone or silica, maybe like glass, almost like a glass ceiling, right? And they show all the people working away under the sun, right? Nothing new under the sun. And you can almost look at this path of the sun is going in a circular pattern over a convex lens or flat earth. And that's pretty interesting as well. This almost matches some of the diagrams of the how the sun moves through the sky on a flat earth, which is very interesting to me. This silica sand seems to encircle the earth here, like the border edges of it, right? And above. But when they show the rising sun, it's almost outside of the firmament. Now, the book of Enoch talks about this. It says that it rises up through the north to return to the east. Okay? It rises up to the north to return to the east. And the book of Enoch also says that the sun passes through heaven. It actually leaves this dimension and passes through heaven before it returns to us. So the ancient Egyptians seem to be possibly depicting this in this hieroglyph as we dig deeper into this. All right, so that was what I wanted to show you guys for the first part of the show. Now we're going to jump into, and I can't wait for Mark, I think he's in the chat here, to cover this letter. Okay, because that's going to be interesting. This Q letter. Here it is here for Mark, if you're watching. It's called the letter Kaf. This is what it looks like. Again, this is the first letter in the name of Cain's name. Okay, evil twin brother. That's what it looks like. In gematria, it's equal to 100. It's weird how on the 100th day of the year, April 10th, they decided to announce that they were actually able to view a black hole, right? See how this all fits in together? And we showed you how CERN links into these black holes, but yet these scientists are saying that they were able to image this black hole on the 100th day of the year, April 10th, 410, which is 10-4 backwards, the 88th day of the year. And of course, the time on the clock, 10:04, when Marty jumped through time in Back to the Future after reaching 88 miles an hour. This stuff is not all by accident, you guys. 100th day of the year, and of course, the gematria of the letter Q is 100. So it'll be interesting when Mark tears this down. The letter Q. I don't know which one he's on now, but he's been going through these Hebrew letters since the beginning. He may have already covered it and I missed it. You have to check out his channel. Yahuwah's Word is King. All right, so let's close this up. So the Q, I think we firmly established, is really all about a gate. And CERN is a gate, which looks like a Q. And it's all about the eye of the needle and so on and so forth. All right, so now we're going to get into the second part of the show. And this is spooky. This is all about the Texas Super Collider. Let me change screens again. Let's see here. Now what I did here is I popped this into a new program. This program is Movie Maker, and I've edited together some overlays that I put together. These are the top deadliest storms, hurricanes, by death count that have passed through Texas. I took each of them and I superimposed them onto a map. This is the Texas Super Collider, the quote-unquote defunct Large Hadron Collider that was supposed to dwarf CERN. And we're told that the project ended after 14 miles of tunnels were dug and $2 billion were spent. We're told the project ended in 1993. But yet, people are hearing mystery booms around Ellis County, which is where this is. And if any of you live in this area and you've heard any of this stuff going on in Ellis County, any booms or weird humming sounds people are hearing, please chime in the chat because we'd like to know. But I believe this project is underway or could possibly be underway still. Why? Well, I'm going to show you. Let's take a look here. These are the deadliest Texas hurricanes in the last 40 years since the collider began. Let's blow this up. And I zoomed out here so you can get your bearings of where this actual collider is. It's just south of Dallas in northeast Texas. There you can see the little dot at the center of your screen there. There's the borders of the states of Texas there. Now we're going to show you hurricane paths from these top storms that passed through Texas since the 1980s, since this super collider was said to have come and gone. This is Hurricane Harvey, 2017. You can almost see that there's some kind of bubble surrounding the super collider. That's Ike, 2008. Here's Rita, 2005. They all seem to dodge this area. Here's Allison, 2001. Look at that one. Comes up to it and like stops and then turns around. Here's Alicia from 1983. Spins right around it. Charlie, 1998. That one was like an anomaly. Maybe they had it turned off that day. Here's Aaron, 2007. Kind of spinning around. Hermine, 2010. Isn't that weird? Now I think in this next segment, I zoom in a bit so you can get a better image of this. All the same hurricanes I just mentioned. And you can see they all conveniently avoid this area. Now, maybe they're experimenting with some kind of weather warfare, how to steer hurricane. I don't know. Maybe it's nothing. Maybe it's all in our head. I don't know. But guess what? We're allowed to ask questions, right? That's what life's all about. Is asking questions, not just accepting things for what we're told they are. So I wanted to show you that. Let's change screens back again. I know there's a better way to do this, you guys, but I'm kind of a tech-tard, so I just pretty much stick to where we're at. Oh, there it is. Do the best I can. So I'd like to hear your thoughts on what you think that's all about. Top deadliest hurricanes passing through Texas that seem to avoid the place where the Texas super collider was said to exist or said to have been shut down. This like seeming bubble of protection. It's weird. The hurricanes go left, right, and short of the collider, but they never go through it.